Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I thank you for joining me. And my guest this week is a special guest. Her name is Onyii Brown, and she has a fashion line, Onyii Company. And she just came off of New York Fashion Week earlier this summer, and she started off on Etsy. So once I found that out, I knew I really wanted to have her on the podcast because I knew that her story would be inspiring to you. So Onyii, thank you so much for being my guest on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. So before we start, I'm very anxious to hear your story. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
I am Nigerian born. I was, my family, of course, came here for education, to obtain their PhDs in the University of Massachusetts. And so I came here when I was 3 and was raised in the Northeast. And eventually, growing up around, the culture, Nigerian culture, in the Western context, made me really have a desire to create garments that were African, but with a modern twist. But unfortunately, I never really pursued any of my fashion endeavors. I, dove into thrift store shopping and modifying those, maybe add a little print into like the pocket or rip out the side panels of my jeans and put print in them, but nothing of that extent. I actually was majoring in robotic engineering.
I was going to ask, were you studying to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or something? Because that
was definitely robotic engineering. And I remember being in the lab and putting in C programming to make the robot's arm go up and down, that I decided this is just not going to work for me. So I actually quit the program and decided to go into the fashion retail portion at a program at the school. It was there that I had the opportunity of doing internships in New York during the summertime, and worked with a fabric converter. And while working with the fabric converter, was exposed to a lot of different designers that were in the garment district. And what the fabric converter does is they, shop around different fabrics from local mills in New Jersey, and how to treat the fabrics. And of course, designers would say, yay or nay, I want to include this in my collection. Mm-hmm. But then it really sparked wanting to do that creative work, but got scared. And the reason I got scared was there wasn't many women of color in the industry at all, maybe a handful. And it was very intimidating. And so again, I shrank back and quit the program and decided to just major directly in marketing, to be a little bit more safe.
Yeah.
And so from there, I had the opportunity. I'm giving you a long story.
Oh, I'm loving it.
You wanted, but so after that, I still really was connected with my creative side and was intrigued by theater. And so again, not wanting to really commit to anything, with that strong passion for creativity, I ended up, after graduating from college, applying to, insurance companies and corporate settings, and in my interviews actually kind of talked the recruiters out of hiring me
you.
and seeing how I could not be stuck in a cubicle or in a corporate building.
Yeah.
So I decided to apply to fellowships for theater companies and landed an amazing one at the Arena Stage in DC. And so again, I'm in the business side of performing arts or creative career, in a creative career, and really enjoyed it. Eventually, I still didn't want to, after the fellowship, commit to another corporate position. So I ended up applying to yet another fellowship. And this fellowship was actually amazing. I ended up with this company called Counterpart International and was able to do work in Zimbabwe with microfinancing and being able to really be in Africa, which I really wanted to be in. And once that was over, had the opportunity to go and work in Nigeria before moving to coming back to the States. And again, it was, development work and empowering women to be independent and be able to, create income for their homes. But getting married, I'm skipping forward. I ended up getting married and moving to Texas and wasn't able to find work until I decided to enter commercial real estate finance. And I liked it because I wanted the freedom and the money was awesome until the crash.
Right.
2008. I was with my second child by then, and decided, this is ridiculous. I'm just going to stay home and let my husband be the primary breadwinner. And he did. It wasn't until he lost his job that I was presented with laying in bed. Actually, I was laying in bed and praying to God, what do I do next? I, decided to apply to jobs. I was queen of interviews, but never landing anything. And so literally I was in bed and the Lord spoke to me and said, and showed me a skirt. And I was like, a skirt? And it was in my mind, I saw clearly the wrap skirt. And I wasn't a big sewer. I didn't have any formal sewing training, maybe like home economics in high school. But I remembered a girlfriend of mine left her sewing machine in my garage. So I literally went to my garage and I took fabric from, going back and forth to home, Nigeria, that I've stored in suitcases that have never been opened in, I don't even know. And I literally got the fabric and I began to sew. I sewed my first wrap skirt and I texted all my girlfriends and said, will you buy this? And they felt so sorry for me.
Those are the best customers.
They did. And, and they texted all their people. And next thing I know, I'm literally with $125. That machine that I actually had broke down. And with $125, I started my business.
Whoa.
Yeah.
There was just so much in that story. And every time you said something, I was like, oh, wait, I want to ask about this. But then the story got better. First of all, okay, do you mind if I just rewind and ask you some questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. So did you have reservations? Being a creative person, you know how we are. We always want to be making something, but then there's that. I don't want to call it the rational side of our mind because creativity is rational, but there's that side of your mind that tells you, no, do the safe thing, get a job, get a real degree, a real career, what have you. but you were fighting that a lot.
It was always a constant fight. It was always a battle.
Yeah. And so how were you able to reconcile that? Like cause you eventually did find a job that you liked, but it wasn't what you were most passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
How were you coping with that? Because I know a lot of people who are creative and want to make their living from what they make struggle with having to do the responsible thing. And what would you say to that person right now who's right there in that spot that you found yourself in?
For me, it's crazy because I totally edited a whole bunch of stuff, mm-hmm. but one of the things that I do remember when I was living in Austin, was I always was near artists. I always had the artist friends mm-hmm. who were actually doing it. And so it was the comfort of living vicariously through them, but never really doing it until I actually landed a job with the Austin Lyric Opera, where I was in the fundraising aspect of performing arts, but never, it was always that. It wasn't for me. My breaking point, my turning point was actually about to lose everything. When my safety, what I thought that I was living a safe life. Yeah. My husband was making all the money. I didn't have, even if I was in the profession, any of that could change at any moment. Right. For us, I'm going to be very transparent. We were on the verge of losing everything, losing our house. We were in pre-foreclosure and losing everything to be able to say, okay, you've done all the right things. Right. Until circumstances hit and I was asked to make that decision. I think it was divine intervention that wouldn't allow me to get another job because it was so interesting. I was always the runner up. It was though I'm good enough for the position, but I was always the runner up. It didn't make sense. Yeah, you go into job interviews when you're qualified, they love you. And then the manager, I've had one interview. The manager says, I really want to hire you, but something's telling me I can't.
Wow. How do you even take that?
Oh, I cried a lot.
Aww.
Cried a lot. I was like, they don't want me. And she said, it's not that I don't, but something is telling me I can't. I've had interviews where somebody told me I feel like I would be restricting you. And so it was those moments when you have to really sit and be quiet and trust. And so I chose to trust and do it quickly.
Right.
And so, I did. And it was insane because, you're about to lose everything. You're about to lose your house. You're about to lose, everything that you thought was secure. And something's telling you to sew a skirt.
Right. I know. And you're like, a skirt right now? A skirt?
Right now? What am I gonna do?
And plus it's not like you were trained.
And I didn't have training.
Seamstress or anything. Okay. So enter Etsy. And I love that 95% of people who start selling on Etsy first start with friends and family. That's like your training ground or your vetting ground. And, most people will give stuff away for free till friends and family say enough already. Can you just sell it to somebody? Because I don't want any more free stuff. So how did you discover Etsy? Actually,
Etsy, I used to just, I I'm always online. And when I do searches or something, or I don't know if Pinterest was really that. Well, yeah, Pinterest. It always brings up photos of Etsy. I think I was searching for a gift for somebody and came across these amazing bags and saw Etsy and was really drawn to it and started searching on it. And so in that time, I figured this is like how I did it. So with $125, I figured, okay, I eventually ran out of fabric for home. Those sold really quickly. And so what I would have to do is find a distributor for my fabric. And I did. That was in New York. Okay. So I'd call the distributor literally to see if they had enough of that print. I'd posted it on Etsy and really pray that somebody's going to go and search. And once they made the order, I would pay the distributor right then. They would ship it to me, and then I'd sew the skirt within, I'd give myself about a week to make sure all of this happened. It was very stressful.
Whoa, wait. Okay, wait. So wait 1 second. So you sewed one prototype skirt, and then you would put like a swatch of the fabric, but the skirt wouldn't be in that fabric. Yeah. So people would pick the skirt and then, would pick the fabric they want, but the style was
the same.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And that was how I was able to build my inventory.
Oh, that's smart. Because you didn't keep any. You bought it when you got the order.
I did, but then I started building the inventory. So one order would turn into, I would equate it to 3 bolts of fabric or 3 pieces of fabric, or then I'd have variations, and then I'd build my variations from orders.
Okay. And just so everyone knows, Onyii's website is onyiico.com, and the fabric she uses it's Ankara, right? Yes, it's called Ankara. It's an African print material. Very vivacious. Just the designs it's hard to describe. You have to go to the website and check it out. It's Onyii and Company, and I'll spell that. It's ONYIIANDCO.com. And I will have links directly to Onyii's website the blog post at convome.com, so you can see what these look like. So typically, and Onyii, I'm just going to explain to people so they understand, Ankara is worn across Africa. It's a very commonly worn fabric there. It's spelled Ankara. And before, the designs were very, across the board, very much the same. You wore a top and a wrap, and that was it. But what she's doing with the designs now is just making these fabulous dresses and skirts with blouses, very modern looking, not like they used to wear back in the day. And that's what's so different about what she's doing. Okay, sorry. I wanted to explain that. Onyii, you still... Okay. So, all right. So now you're gaining momentum on Etsy. And then what happens next?
Well, I also discovered it was kind of like the Ankara boom. And so I just kind of discovered that I had to, as a growing business, be able to differentiate myself. It was nothing, Etsy was working great for me. But I wanted to be able to have my own separate website.
Okay.
But it's interesting now. I kind of want to go back to Etsy because what's happening is because of the industry is changing, I'm always changing my site. I'm always changing each collection. But I have people still asking me I want the design from my first collection, which was Wrap Go Live, and it's not available on my site.
How do they know? How do they see that still?
On Instagram or TikTok,
okay.
They call, or they email and say, I came across this image that's yours, or on Pinterest, and they'll say, I don't see you carrying this anymore. And then I'd have to let them know and do separate billing and all of that. So I was actually thinking of reopening the store in Etsy for past collections, and they can just order those collections through Etsy.
Oh, fabulous.
Versus be able to,
right.
still be able to keep moving forward, because right now we're actually going into a new direction. The vision of Onyii Co is, and this is one of our taglines, is the gift of travel in every garment.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means that we travel in different countries and different fabrics, and being able to explore and kind of curate cultures that have been touched by the African diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
So even in our spring collection that's coming out, we decided to focus on Mexico, being here in Texas. And but it's interesting. For me as the designer, being able to explore some of the weaving processes and things of that. And a lot of them were influenced by African slaves that came to Mexico, and these cultures are Black Mexicans that helped with the creation of this weaving technique. And so I tried desperately to make my collection have this stuff, but it's so expensive, and it takes about 6 months just to weave one about like a 6 feet by 6 feet or a 10 feet by 10 feet piece.
Wow.
So,
because it's all hand woven.
All hand woven.
Wow. Okay.
And so, we went with the next best thing was to achieve the look and and we, were able to incorporate that with the yellows and printed, linens and things of that nature, and being inspired by the silhouettes. But, each season we're traveling to somewhere, going someplace that's been touched by Africa.
Oh, I like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point did you know that, at what point did you feel it was time to leave Etsy, and how did you end up at New York Fashion Week?
It's the power and the age of the internet. It's a privilege actually to be in this age, because everything was so much harder before, to be able to kind of market your brand. You would need a lot more money.
Mm-hmm.
You would need a lot of support, PR companies, all these different brokers to broker your goods.
Yeah.
And so, for me, the decision came when I wanted to really develop my brand separate from other people. Etsy is such an amazing way to get started. And I know a lot of designers who are still... Oh, no. Sorry. I know a lot of designers who are... who still use Etsy, and they, have bigger brands.
Mm-hmm.
They're able to manage their inventory better and things of that nature, just sell. But for me, it was the brand, and and my particular product. If I had a specific like jewelry line that not many people were with special techniques, I'd still be with Etsy. But because the Ankara movement of the, it's very, very, very popular, I just felt like that particular product was kind of saturated.
Okay.
Etsy market. And I still get people saying, I saw you on Etsy. I mean, it's very strange.
Wow. How long has it been since you were last on Etsy?
About a year.
Okay.
And I've started 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
So all of this has happened very quickly.
That is quick.
It's miraculously quickly. I mean, I am an anomaly. I know that. I came to terms with that. I was on the Yolanda Adams morning show, and I just, it like hit me then that this is just not normal.
No, yes, no. Some people wait months for their first sale, and, for everything to happen in a matter of 2 years is not normal. That is blessed, really. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your new lines and before that, let's talk about New York Fashion Week. How was that for you? How was it to be part of something so that's huge for anyone in the fashion industry to be a part of that? What was the experience like for you leading up to it and then when it was actually happening?
Yeah, I was personally invited to New York Fashion Week. Otherwise, there's no way I would even have dreamt of doing it at this stage of my business. But I had a very, very short amount of time to get everything together and a very limited budget. So, it was about a month and a half prior, I started the brainstorming process and, selecting fabrics. And literally it was creating a piece a day.
Wow.
So sewing a piece a day. For the last year and a half, I have to backtrack that. I enrolled in the community college to learn industry standard sewing because I knew I needed to have that type of skill set in order to push quality. And so my interpretation of quality is not the same as industry interpretation of quality. And so in that, I developed some solid relationships, such as a pattern maker. I learned how to make my own patterns.
Oh.
And some really good relationships that have been able to kind of guide me through this process in preparation for New York Fashion Week. And so I had a wonderful classmate. I had to reel them in and say, hey, will you help me with this big, huge task? And so, I put sketches together and he suggested certain things. He has like that eye of the pop. And so, he, suggested some really amazing key things that I should consider in the process, of the sketching, the sketching and drawing portion. And, it's such a beautiful thing as an artist to, see it on paper and then, my mind it's insane. It's abnormal, but I'll just do it. I'll just see it in my head and I will, use paper and start creating the pattern. And then I'll just start sewing. It doesn't make sense to me, but it just kind of happens. And anyone who's, I have a studio downstairs in our house. And so anyone who comes in there, they're just like, how does this all work? It doesn't make sense. I was like, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It just happens.
Wow. So everything you design, you make first.
Absolutely.
To see it. Okay.
Make it first. I am the one who creates it. I'm the one who puts the initial pattern together. And then I work with my pattern maker to perfect it, or if I find anything that needs to change, then she can do it. And then we digitize all our patterns into different sizes.
Okay. That I was going to ask that next was how do you do the sizing? But then, yeah, that makes sense.
Technology.
I tell you, it's amazing. So, Onyii, I have a question. What advice would you give to that Etsy seller who is listening that's trying to develop their own line? Maybe it's clothing, maybe it's jewelry, maybe it's art, and find themselves and make their mark and just have something that's unique to them. What advice would you give to that person?
I'd give them two things. So one, I'm really into scripture. If you don't believe it, it doesn't, but I believe that if you're going to do something, you do it with all your might. Don't get distracted by what people say, your age, your gender. I'm a mom with 3 small kids. When I started, I had literally my newborn was 3 months when I first started, when all of this happened. So just do it with all of your might. The second is do not despise the days of small beginnings. So do it don't overwhelm yourself. Don't try and take on, a whole, now I have 13 look or 15 look collection. But it took time to get there.
Right.
And I also have support. I have a team that I work with, and so I started out with a wrap skirt. So do your wrap skirt, do whatever widget, any purse, whatever it is, do it and do it well and perfect that and provide variations to that. Because then I went from a wrap skirt to wrap dresses, and then from wrap dresses to crop tops and skirt combinations,
Right.
So it was a gradual process, and be patient, patient with yourself and others.
Yeah, patience I think it's the thing that we all seem to lack when we want stuff to happen. It's like now. No, yesterday. No, the day before yesterday, this should have happened already.
But the beauty of Etsy is it's not expensive.
Yeah. Yes.
It's such a low barrier to entry in your business. it's so amazing.
Yeah, that is true. And there's really good support as well.
Yeah. And you have a marketplace. You are able to market your business on this platform. You don't have, like now I have the World Wide Web, but it was also, that came from partnerships elsewhere. That was another reason why I decided to branch out, was also partnerships that I've created.
Okay.
But you're able to put taglines and, search criterias for people. That's awesome.
Yeah. And actually, I should talk about that. When you were on Etsy, did you do anything special to market your line? You mentioned the tags, but did you do anything else? Were you doing social media promotion of your Etsy shop, or were you just letting people find you organically?
I let people find me organically.
Okay. Okay. And right now, what, if any, resources do you use that is working really well for you that you can recommend?
What resources you said?
Yeah. So maybe if it's for sewing or an online resource, a learning tool or something, anything that you found helpful that you can recommend to the listeners?
Well, YouTube.
Yeah, oh, yes.
I learned a lot on YouTube. Whenever I have a question pertaining for my business, I Google it. Also, there's so many different resources. Like for me in fashion, I, registered to, or subscribe to, people or businesses that offered, webinars, for fashion or startup fashion. Is a startup fashion, which was very resourceful for me. One of my distributors, is Makers Row, and I found them they asked me eventually, but I kept running into them on, their presence everywhere. And then started subscribing to their blogs and their newsletters. And when opportunities came up, I applied. Just like the Martha Stewart thing, that actually was sent to me through one of I think it was Startup Fashion or one of those fashion subscriptions and stuff that I am a part of. And I would never have known about that or applied to it if I didn't kind of step out and kind of do online networking.
Wow. Yeah. Cool.
So,
thank you for sharing those. Now, Onyii, what's the best way people can find you if they want to learn more about you?
My website, Onyii Co, ONYIIANDCO.com, and Instagram and Facebook. I'm always posting stuff on Instagram. I love Instagram, actually.
I do too. I'm just learning to love it. I'm like, oh, this is really, really nice. I like this.
Yeah, less words.
Yes.
Instagram. And yeah, I mean, if they can, right now we're running the contest, but we update on newsletters all the time. We give away stuff and, things of that nature.
Okay. And I will have links to Onyii's website. Again, it's onyii.co.com, which is ONYIIANDCO.com. And then I'll also have links to her social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter too. Onyii, thank you. Sorry, go on.
I know. I was just also, we're starting to work more on Pinterest. It's just a lot of work.
Pinterest is work. Okay, let's not get into it. I don't get Pinterest. That's just the bottom line for me.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for being my guest and for sharing your story. I think it's really inspiring. I'm so glad that you were able to come on and talk about your story and your transition from Etsy. I know that people will be encouraged because sometimes we want things to happen really quickly. And okay, yeah, in your case it did, but there was still a lot of hard work that went into it and that's still going into it. So I thank you so much for taking the time out to come and talk to me and be on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I thank you for listening to the podcast, and I will be back next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.